has lost the plot when it comes to common sense, and we shouldn't really even need to be having these conversations about what a woman is, because common sense would tell us. We shouldn't need to be wearing masks because common sense would tell us that that's only for someone who's working on a building site that doesn't want to inhale dust. We shouldn't be taking jabs because we don't know what's in them. So we don't even need to know what's in them. All we need to know is that we don't know what's in them. So why would we put something in our blood when we don't know what the contents of the injection are? So these are little common sense tips, tricks, and hacks, which are based in primordial survival need and primordial knowing, which runs through our heart, basically, and both parts of our brain. But at school, they ignore, I say in my talks that they essentially ignore the four main brains, which is head, left brain, head, right brain, heart brain, and gut brain. And 3 out of those 4 brains are completely neglected, and only one tiny part of the left brain in the head is used. So common sense comes from the judicious use of all those 4 brains. And schooling is deactivating the use of those brains. A question that I would ask to highlight the lack of common sense in current thinking is something, again, I feature in my talk, is about carbon dioxide. And I simply ask, is carbon dioxide a pollutant, or is it a nutrient, a life-giving nutrient? Now, all you need is a little, you don't need to be a scientist. You just need a little modicum of common sense to know that it's the gas of life.
Yeah.
No carbon, no life, no humanity.
What's interesting...
This is what I mean by common sense.
Yes, and you start to wonder whether the sense that you say is it actually common anymore, common amongst us all, or whether these days it's a few people that seem to have this sense. It's almost now as if it's a rare thing. And on the gas of life business, I mean, if ever I do any talks about global warming and I mention not H2O, carbon dioxide, and I say it's the gas of life, and exactly along the lines of, is it a pollutant? And people would say, but water, if you have too much water, you'll drown. If you drink too much water, it's not good for you. It's about the degree that you have. And so they start to muddy the water, so to speak, by bringing in other things. And you're saying, but is it a bad thing, full stop, or is it a good thing? Why do they pump CO2 into greenhouses so that they can grow tomatoes and other plants like that? Without it, they would not be as prosperous as they were, and we wouldn't have the crops that we have.
Right. And when someone responds to our common sense with a spurious piece of nonsense, what they are doing is actually gaslighting us. And it features hugely in my current talks, because I don't want to, well, spoiler alert, folks, but the N word, narcissism, features very highly in my current talk, which is called From Globalist Control to Sovereign Freedom, which I'm going all around the country doing. And this is what happens when you talk to a narcissist. They will not allow you to win any perceived debate. They must have the last word, and they do feel better when you walk away feeling frustrated or thwarted in some way. So it's not an even playing field. We think that we're talking to people who are as very much as reasonable and as intelligent as we are, and very often that is just not the case. They may be as intelligent, but they are rarely as reasonable.
Yes, well, I can go along with that. You mentioned there from the globalist to sovereign freedom. Can you explain what you mean by sovereign freedom? I think we all know what globalists are and what they're trying to do, and people are sort of are beginning to understand that. It's the fact that there might be a way out of it, and what it actually might look like.
Well, in my talk, I described the essential difference between a sovereign and a slave. And I boil it down to slaves need permission while sovereigns do not. So if you feel that you need permission to do anything like watch TV, and in the world of commerce, permission is referred to as a license. If you feel that you need a license to drive, a license to watch TV, a license to do anything, a license to fish, whatever, then you have abdicated responsibility for your own life. You have surrendered sovereignty on that issue to an institution or a perceived higher authority, and you have, in effect, let yourself and the side down. And the side, of course, is sovereign humanity. And what this current period in history is going to allow us to do is to recover that sovereignty, initially as individuals, and then eventually as a collective. And when we realize that we don't need permission. For example, when you go to school, they are now teaching, and I think this came up in your talk yesterday, so I'm just reiterating what the young lady said, that you cannot say no and you cannot ask why.
Yeah, I mean, that's just absolutely awful.
So this requires an immense pushback, because if you cannot say no and you cannot ask why, then who are you? You're certainly not a sovereign. So if you're not a sovereign, there's no chair to sit on, you're a slave. It's one or the other.
And as a young person who has no experience and is growing up, and you're thrust into an institution that you've never asked to go, and you're being taught things you've never entered your head about, and you're suddenly being told this is how you've got to behave, you can't say no, you've got to obey, and it's as overt as that. It's very difficult for somebody who has no experience of life to push back against that. And if parents are ignorant of that as well, then there's no intervention. And as a parent, you're the guardian of your child and should be educating your child enough so that once they're of a certain age, that they can stand on their own and push back against people who are being overtly authoritarian to them. And that I think when we exposed that in the video yesterday, in the interview yesterday, I think that's had a huge effect on people thinking, bloody hell, that's not right. And clearly it isn't. But that asking for permission that we've indoctrinated our kids, and to an extent, a lot of us are like that, and we saw that during lockdown. How do you push back when it appears the full force of government and its authority, the police and all the sort of people in authority, doctors and mainstream media, are pushing out this one very solid message? You must, for example, in that case, take a jab, or you must stay inside, you must obey our law. How do you push back against that?
Okay, well, I'm going to give two answers to that question. It may turn into three, and I'm going to pull something out of the hat that is relevant, again, to your conversation on education that you had yesterday.
Thank you.
So the first thing I would say that you do to push back is to be yourself. And I'm going to give a very specific example of how I was myself at a certain key moment in time back in the so-called lockdown. I was giving a little speech, and it was a very little speech because I had an audience of about 3 or 4. And I was in Macclesfield in Cheshire, that I describe as arguably the nation's most evil town. And I hope they're watching, because I want them to know that if they don't already. Now, why do I describe Macclesfield as the nation's most evil town? Well, I had rocked up with my little PA and a few friends, and I was giving them a little talk about the truth behind CV19, and in fact, that no one has ever isolated a virus. There's nothing to fear but fear itself, etc., etc. I had the store. The day in question was known as Treacle Market. Nothing to do with treacle. It's just an ancient story about a horse that drops a cargo of treacle, and it turns out that that's the site that they have the market on. And so there was about 6 stall holders because it was lockdown, social distancing, and normally there's about 60 or 30. And there was hardly any customers because people were still frightened of going outside. Mm. And I rock up, and it's almost like a ghost town, and I start saying what I'm saying. And 1 or 2 of the stall holders come over to me and say, "You can't say that. You're killing our business." I said, "I beg your pardon." I said, "This is lockdown. You haven't got any business. I'm just here to give you a way out." And anyway, long story short, I had passers-by trying to pull out the cords from my PA system. And I had one particular stall holder come up to me, face up to me, take a close-up picture and says, "Next time you're in Macclesfield, I'll be waiting for you." So amid all this passive-aggressive, actually not that passive at all, nonsense, I then had a gaggle of officious, yellow-vested, high-vis vested council workers who came up to me and says, "Do you have a license to emit amplified sound?" And obviously I didn't. So we're back to license and permission. I just said to them, "No, I don't have a license, but I'm just speaking using a microphone and a speaker. But if you think that that's a legal problem, then I suggest you contact your legal department, who can then contact my legal department, and we can thrash this out using paperwork." In other words, that was my polite way of saying,
Okay, so all the videos that I've done so far, I'm on my moon video now. I'm going over to my moon videos. None of the moon videos do 360s, first of all. That's what I'm doing different. Second of all, they don't go light to light. Light to light is very important when you're looking at the system for what it is. It really is. Take advantage of the light cropping for you, and it's the light that's bouncing around in your camera and the light that's bouncing around in your eyes, and take advantage of that, anybody that's coming to this, because I'm going to keep cropping, but I already did 2 videos, and I never got to listen to this guy Dave talk, and I like him. He's pretty good. So let me try to shut up through this video, and I'm just going to keep showing moon videos, but these are my moon videos, but I just wanted to point that out. And I usually do anyways, point that out.
You can piss right off.
Bulk off.
I'm doing what I'm doing,
Yeah.
and I don't need your permission. Thank you. Now, we were in daylight hours, so nobody could argue that I was creating a public nuisance. And I was prepared to lower the volume just in case someone came out from a house saying, "I'm a shift worker, I'm trying to sleep, could you lower the volume?" And I would have done.
Yes.
And that's back to common sense. So, that was me basically being the change that I wish to see. So in other words, in answer to your question, step 1, be that sovereign who does not need permission. And I was
just going to interrupt there just to say, did they leave you alone at that
point? Of course, because they had no choice.
Right.
I gave them no choice because I challenged their fake authority. Their authority, going back to school, is simply based on our fear, trepidation, and ignorance. And that segues beautifully onto the second point that I want to make, is that I have devised a remedy to take into schools. Now, there's all kinds of remedy for different situations, but I just want to focus on schools because that's where my heart is.
Right.
And the remedy that people can...
The thing is, though, Dave, if you come to these videos, I'm hoping that Richard will bring you to my videos so I can explain a few things to you that you'll take right off with. Zeros and infinity. 0 and infinity are human concepts. They're not real. When you start looking at the system, you're going to realize that if we take 0 and infinity out of our math, everything will change for the better. There's a big ape face that's coming through. I'm going to try to get you here.
can take into schools comes in 3 parts, and it's
So in other words, as you can see from what I'm showing you on the moon right here, you go look at the moon and see it for what it is, and you're going to realize that the entire heliocentric model was a lie. The geocentric model was a lie. So you can just get rid of all that and just see things for what they are. You'll be able to throw away all that information. It's all useless. So the same thing goes for all schools, right? Because all schools teach you about the moon and the sun and the heliocentric model. So we know that those were all lies, so you can throw them all away. That's a good thing. Zero and infinity being a lie means that the clock, so if in school they teach you how to tell time, but if time itself is a lie, then we can fix that. Learning the moon cycles, and now I'm going to be showing you the false creator slash creator, the creator of the bio build, and I'm going to show you his clock and the moon and the timelines and the way that the stationary stars send the energy down through the moon and lock in coordinates with the earth and all energies that enter the bio realm at the time the moon is lined up for each sequence of events or whatever, however you want to terminalize it or word it. And you're going to see that this is the way it works. So therefore, all religions then are unnecessary. We have the real religion now. We have the true religion, and it's not a religion. It's just reality. So all the religions can all go away. And I want to point out that the best thing about all this too is there's no fighting. You let them. They want to use their zeros, fine. You know what zeros is, right? It's all the internet. It's all the computer of things. It's all the internet of things. The zeros, 0 1 0 0 1 1 0 1 0 0 1. When really there's no such thing as zeros. So if they want to use their computer, let them. If they want to cut off gasoline and supplies and food chains and all this shit, let them do it. Seriously, don't even worry about it. We've been tricked into thinking that we need to eat 3 square meals a day. We're putting food in our body that doesn't match with our electrical makeup anyway. So unless we were to learn exactly what we're supposed to be absorbing, because we're really the whole eating thing and eating 3 times a day, I'm telling you right now, you're gonna see a bunch of shit differently now when you go and look at the true creator's work and see how this all works. It has nothing to do with anything we were ever told, taught, heard, thought, learned, bought, programmed.
it's encapsulated on a card known as the school protection card. Because I'm thinking that, okay, I've spent the last 2 or 3 years endeavoring to empower adults, and I feel like sometimes I'm flogging a dead horse, because either they're going to be empowered anyway, in which case they don't really need my help, or they're too statist and too locked into the system, and it's just, I'm getting nowhere fast. And then I thought, well, hang on, why don't I turn my attention, which was originally my focus when I was more like the people's educator, an author of a book called School No Place for Children, which is mentioned in the book that you mentioned earlier.
Yes.
And why don't I amalgamate these two worlds, bring them together, see what I can come up with? And what I did come up with was something called the School Protection Card. Right, how does this work? You give the card to the boy or girl, and you say to the boy or girl, they would have to be at least late primary, so age 10 probably, and say to the boy or girl, now then, I would like to take you out of school, but mummy or daddy is objecting, or I'm the only mummy or dad you have or caregiver, and I have to work, and so we have to keep sending you to school. We don't want to, but we have to for now. Because let's face it, the common sense remedy is just to deregister the boy or girl, and that's the end of that. So you give them a card. On the card it says, if you're given an unreasonable demand, if your teacher wants you to do something that doesn't feel right, teacher or staff member, so let's broaden it out a bit, then ask them if they are giving you an order.
So I love this idea. I really do. I like it. If things weren't so far gone, that would be a great idea. But the problem is that if you were to do what you're talking about doing, Dave, and it sounds like it would work, and Richard can pass this message on, you're leaving out all the other things that I'm talking about. If you're going to allow the kids to go to school and learn lies that they live on a spinning wet pararocket ball, spinning at 1,100 miles an hour, flying through the vast of outer space at 10,000 miles an hour, along with the moon going around us at 2,200 miles an hour, and you put all their math together, and it's all a bunch of shit. And then you teach them that, for example, that on one hand, there's a Van Allen belt. You can teach them all about the Van Allen belts, right? All lies, but you can teach them about it. And they do in school. They teach them about this, especially as they're getting into the older grades. And they'll tell them that originally, when Mr. Van Allen had found these belts, there were 3 of them when he first found them, and then after he died, they found several more, and then later several more, and I believe they're now claiming 7 to 11, somewhere in that area, of these belts, and these are radiation belts, and they have they're talking 2,500 degrees Celsius to 4,500 degrees Celsius temperatures in order to get through them. And then to get through the belts, because the belts are supposedly like they tell you this is the ball that you live on kind of thing, right? Just like tell you the moon's a ball, they're full of shit. All right, so the belts are like this, right? So their spaceship has to go over and then this way and then this way and then this way. And these belts are moving. So in other words, there's openings like this, they say. That's what they claim. There's openings like, you see this opening right here. And the belts are going like this. And there's 7 of them. So in order to go straight through, and even if you went through the openings of the belt, even if your rocket ship was able to do all that stuff, right, and go in and out of to get by the belts and everything, these openings that the rocket ship would have to go through are 2,500 to 3,500 degrees Celsius, they claim. Well, that doesn't make any sense because we don't have any metal or material that would even hold up to them type of temperatures. So not only do you have to go through one belt of that temperature according to their science, so why even tell you the science is that way, is my point. Unless they were trying to prove to themselves just how ingenious these zombie slaves are. What will they go along with? So if we tell them contradicting things, will they still go along with it? Yeah, we do. We're 7.8 billion zombie slaves. We'll go along with whatever they tell us. It's unbelievable. So they say that their spaceship, when they had to go to the moon, I'm calling it a spaceship because I'm being sarcastic, but their fake ass, goofy looking fucking rocket penis has to go like this, do all these things to get to the Van Allen belts. Now, by the time it got out the other side of the Van Allen belt, of course, it would not even make it into the Van Allen belt before it disintegrated, right? Because we don't have anything that could hold that. Now, even if we did have a metal that would hold up to those type of temperatures, whatever was in that can, whatever was in that flying penis, is going to disintegrate. It'd just be ashes as soon as it got near the belt. So why even tell people about the Van Allen belt? Why even mention that there's a radiation belt that no one can get past? First of all, they should be calling it a veil and be honest about it. Even calling it a firmament like they did in some of their books was better than calling it a Van Allen belt. But they needed to bring modern space nonsense into the mix, so that's what they did. Okay, so then let's say you are magical enough like NASA to get in, and also, Elon Musk and other space travelers, fucking weirdos. So they get through the Allen belt, they come out the other side with their rocket, their penis comes out. Okay, so once they're in this dark of space, they tell us there's no gravity out there. That's what they tell us. Their science, they tell us that. We don't know. We're not up there, right? So you're going by their science. So they say there's no gravity. So if you have a rocket, and this rocket, we all know from, again, going to school, they tell us contradicting things. Well, gee, teacher, if the rocket needs oxygen to bounce off of, and the rocket fuel even has oxygen in it to bounce off other oxygen that's around it, and that's where rockets get their force. So when your stupid rocket comes out your impossible Van Allen belt after, somehow miraculously making it through. And then if it did, when it reached the outer limits of the veil, right? In this case, they call it the Van Allen belts. So when it reaches that outer limit, how's it moving anywhere? And how's it steering? Because it wouldn't have any force. There's no oxygen there to bounce the oxygen off. And they got some really ridiculous, nonsensical stories for anybody who might really ask that question. And then the rest of everyone else just goes, oh, yeah. And I'm not even going to tell you what they are because they're so fucking stupid. It's ridiculous. And this is the way it is. So what Dave is saying is correct. But really, all the shit was a lie. Everything was. So to have the kids go to school, no, you got to get to the parents. You got to get to the parents and say, why the fuck didn't your grandparents wake up? So, we don't want to be angry at everybody for not waking up, but we're certainly not going to keep going along with it. So if your great-great-grandparents were fucking comatose zombie slaves who sold the next generation out, and that happened again, generation after generation after generation. Well, I'm 50 years old. You guys are about the same age as me, Richard and David. So, it's our generation. If we're going to stop it, we can't tell the kids and send the kids to school with things that are saying, oh, yeah, you can fight the system if you want to. Nah, man, there's no fighting the system. They'll fucking take your kids away. They'll arrest them. They'll arrest you. They'll do all kinds of stupid shit because we allowed it to get this far. Our ancestors sold us out. The zombie slave motherfuckers that we all loved and who loved us sold us out. And we cannot do the same thing again. We can't keep doing this over and over and over and over again. And that's why that's why they want to do the reset. Because there's going to be people like us that are going to be waking up to it all. And they have to make sure they censor everybody and get everyone locked down before we all talk to each other. And that's when I say that we're running out of time. I'm not talking about the 2024 reset, because that's when they're probably going to hit the reset button. But that's not what I mean by running out of time. I mean we're running out of time because I have no fucking internet. I got 20 agents fucking following me around for months at a time. I got people that have been coming on in the last 6 years that I've been on YouTube, all espionage, weird Freemasony, Illuminati-ish fucking shit that goes on. All kinds of weird shit that nobody will even look at and believe because it sounds, oh, that's fucking crazy. He's fucking nuts and whatever, No, man, I ain't fucking nuts. You guys are all fucking geniuses. So we got to change it, major changes. And my videos got to start getting, the Michael Oziak channel should have millions of fucking views over there, really, seriously. For the shit that I'm showing everybody, I mean, it should have millions of views. I'm not exaggerating. And I'm not looking for fame or anything. I'm telling everybody, remaster my videos and then go show the system to each other because we're running out of time. And then we're not going to have the access to talk to each other again anymore,
Or simply a request. If they're giving you a request, ask them, tell them that thank you very much, but it doesn't feel right for me to do that. In other words, you're teaching them self-assertion, self-confidence skills, and command of language. So that's your first, so that's sovereignty for juniors, prototype sovereignty for juniors. If the teacher says, no, it's an order, there's no such thing as no, you've got to do as you're told and stop asking questions. Well then, if it's an order, then I have here my invoice, my family invoice for compliance with that order. Obviously, I'm not holding an actual order up or an invoice up, but if people want to know more, they can go on my website and download the materials, the PDF. So that order will say something like invoice for compliance, fee schedules for compliance, £500 per minute for unlawful restrictions of movement, detentions. So it's substantial. And even if you were grown up and you were put in a police cell without lawful excuse, a former serving officer told me that you could charge £3,000 an hour for false imprisonment or £1,000 a minute if you're vulnerable. Well, a boy or girl by definition is a vulnerable young...
Absolutely.
Yeah, so we are talking about £1,000 a minute. So I've met the system halfway, reduced.
Yeah, you're playing their game, Dave. You're gonna lose. You know that. You know that you're gonna lose. It's a non-win. You can't play their game. You gotta, yeah, we gotta talk.
It to £500 a minute.
Wow.
So that's your first remedy in commerce. And people say, well, what commerce? Why commerce? Well, schools are commercial entities. The management referred to boys and girls as units and as the product. So we are here fighting fire with fire.
Right.
So as you could say, the skeptics will say, David, it hasn't got.
No, David, because think about it. As parents, we sell our children out from the time they're born, right? We give the hospital their umbilical cord. We allow them to take their footprints, their fingerprints. They're allowed to take pictures of the baby, so they already have facial recognition from birth. We allow the entire zombie slave system take over. So you can't get to school age and then have parents sending their kids to school saying, no, 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 because no, you sold your kids out. You know, we all know this. You know this. I can tell by the way you're talking. You know all this already. So when we gave them a social security number, when we put their name in capital letters, when we know that their social security numbers traded on the stock market, they're zombie slaves, our children, and so are we. We need to turn it around and go back now. You can't just try to stop what's coming because it already happened. Thousands of years already.
Got a chance. The boy or girl won't know what they're doing. The parents will be too nervous, blah, blah, blah. I accept that. So there is backup. There's two backup strategies. And I say to them, here's a backup strategy if your mum and dad haven't given you an invoice or they don't really fully comprehend what it means to have an invoice. Ask the teacher or staff member if they're giving you a choice. If the answer is yes, then we're back to the self-confidence. Thank you very much, but no thank you. And if they say no, then we hit them with statutory remedy. It's Modern Slavery Act 2015, Section 3, subsection 5, modern exploitation, criminal exploitation. It is a crime to force or to induce, and on the card I say make, because boys and girls prefer that simple language, I think. Mm-hmm. It's a crime to make or induce in the statute language of the...
No, it's not, because we sold our kids into slavery as soon as they were born. So now you actually don't have nothing by law. We have to go above and beyond the laws that are in place. It's a nice thought, though, and I'm glad to see people are thinking, but come and watch my videos. Go on the Mike Loziak channel. Richard, please refer him to my channel. Let him look around for a little while, and I bet you he'll get it.
The statute, a person, in this case a boy or girl, to do something against their will using threats or force.
Right.
That's criminal.
Yeah.
Somebody has used that in the freedom movement. Someone's used that to get HMRC off their backs.
Really?
Yeah, so basically we're using the system. We've had this since 2015, the Modern Slavery Act 2015. Nobody's been using it. Well, it has started now. In the last 12 months, people have started to use it. It's in my course notes, so there'll be an acceleration process. Now, of course, if you're dealing with the proverbial narcissist in school, and the school itself represents narcissism, then they will kick off because they cannot afford to give you the last word. Mm. So it will kick off, it will escalate, in which case we have the ace up our sleeve, which is international law. The 1989 UN Convention on the Rights of the Child say that all discipline in schools, it's Article 28, and it's on the card. Everything that I'm saying now is on this card, the school protection card. Article 28, 1989 United Convention on the Rights of the Child, quote, all discipline in schools should respect human dignity. Now, to my naive ears, that's game, set, and match. What school would want to run the risk of being reported to the local press for being in breach of the United Nations Convention in effect on human rights?
Yes. Well, yes, no, I mean, absolutely. Who would? But you can sort of see a situation in which the teacher, presented with this by a child, would be at first flummoxed. What are you talking about? Look, I want you to go and do whatever it was, and if the child is brave enough to stand it out and say, is that a request or is this an order? And he says, well, of course it's an order. He's like, fine, as you say, it's £500 a minute. Happy to do it. It's £500 a minute. Thank you very much. But you can see the teacher would be either dismissing this. How would you then, if the child is then still forced by threats and menaces to go and carry out whatever it is, and he says, well, I did that for an hour, and you go, well, okay, that's £30,000, thanks very much. How would you go ahead and then take that further so that it actually means something rather than an exercise in who's going to win the argument at that stage?
It may not be necessary to take it further. You've got witnesses in the classroom, so the boy or girl could have make a pre-arrangement with one or two of their classmates, show them the card and show them what they propose to do. You are bound to have support from at least one or two.
Yeah, but come on, Dave. I mean, think about it. Really, I mean, it's over in 10 minutes. It's a short court case. Do you have your what's your as soon as you walk in? What's your name? Michael Oziak. Okay. Well, what's your social security number? Give him my social security number. All right. Well, there's no argument here. Your parents sold you into slavery at the time you were born, and we have all your data from the time you were born, including your umbilical cord, your fingerprints, your blood, everything. We know everything about you, your full life, and we got you by your balls, and you got nothing to say about it, so goodbye, and that's it. So we're not going to get anywhere doing it that way. There's other ways. We can do it, but not that way.
And probably a lot more than one or two. They are already rioting in schools, bless them, and so they should, because they are being deprived of, I think it's safe toilet space and permission to go to the toilet. So,
yes, and they're lying about all that as well, because the whole transgender thing and homosexuality can all be explained by looking at the true creator's work, the false creator's work, and it will all be explained rather than arguing back and forth. It's quite simple, actually. Quite simple. True creator sees everything as one. The false creator sees everything as divided. And that's the way the false creator did his entire build, was division. Boys from girls, up from down, left from right, back from forth, in from out. Everything was divided under the false creator's biosystem. But the true creator didn't see it that way, and you can tell from the way that the true creator builds. And once you see that, then everybody sees that, then all that transgender shit all goes away.
I think we need to be, again, apply some common sense and appreciate that boys and girls, I know a lot of boys and girls that will bite my hand off when I give them this card. Just give me that card, I'm in, I'm doing it, I'm on, I'm involved, count me in. Because we seriously underestimate the evil that is being visited upon the young ones in the classroom, and we seriously underestimate their readiness to push back against it.
What would you say when knowing children being children, that some children are going to be just belligerent and try things on because they, for whatever reason, they're lazy, or they just want to say, well, I've got this card, because you hear this, you can't make me do anything. I mean, when I was at school, you had blackboard rubbers being thrown at you or whacked over the knuckles with a ruler, which, of course, is not happening now. And kids sort of know, you can't hit me, you can't touch me, and all of this, which doesn't help a cohesive, wholesome classroom to try and get through a lesson if you've got kids deliberately making it awkward for the rest of the class, and the teacher is trying to navigate a way to educate as best they can.
Yeah. Can I challenge you on what you've just said? That there was a healthy dose of statism in the tone of what you've just said.
Right, okay.
My presumption is at the other end of the spectrum, based on personal experience, research for the book, and the the worsening of circumstances that has been taking place in the last few years, the woke agenda, the transsexual agenda, the regenderization, the re-identification of boys and girls. My assumption now is that the classroom, there is no wholesome, cohesive culture in the classroom. It is perverse. It subverts parental authority. It subverts the journey of the boy or girl towards sovereign adulthood. And it needs to be sabotaged, and it needs to be sabotaged quite quickly. Otherwise, we're going to. I mean, we're talking about the future of humanity. It doesn't matter whether a boy or girl ultimately passes 7 GCSEs or 10 GCSEs. It doesn't matter ultimately whether they get 2 A's and a C or 2 B's and a D. It does not matter to humanity. But it does matter that they maintain their dignity and integrity and self-respect and all their gifts and talents and all the things that they could contribute to the world if they were just allowed to. And so my remedy is designed to give them some kind of tool or weapon, if you like, because children are being weaponized. So we need a countermeasure, because we are at war, and the main coalface, if you like, or the interface between those with malevolent intent and those with benevolent intent is now the classroom itself. Because the older ones, we can look after ourselves to a greater or lesser extent. But to trap boys and girls in a prison cell known as a classroom means that we actually need powerful weaponry. And yes, the odd boy or girl who might turn out to be a narcissist by what you were saying. So there'll always be the odd boy or girl, just as there's always the odd grown-up who decides to have a giggle, have a laugh, and abuses this strategy and abuses this tool. But I'm taking the bigger picture, and I'm looking to protect the boys and girls en masse as a collective. And so if the odd one or two abuses this approach, so be it. And this is all part of the beauty of being human. We can't cater for all. You can please some of the people some of the time, etc. Yeah.
So this is absolutely fascinating, and it's really interesting to get your perspective on this. I mean, the logical conclusion, it seems to me, from what you're saying, is actually kids shouldn't be in school at all.
Correct.
And to a certain degree, I would agree with you that the system of schools that we have at the moment and the way that it has gone to where it is now is completely against children and against humanity, and is training us up to be useful drones down the end, and obedient state soldiers in a way to take orders and get on with it. Yet I still think that the schooling and the teaching or imparting of knowledge is a very laudable thing, with hungry, not hungry as in physically knowledge hungry children who want to learn a subject with it in a completely different environment. So you're not saying schooling in itself is a bad thing, but the structure that we have, the imprisonment, the whole thing that we seem at the moment is a terrible is a terrible way of teaching kids anything.
What I would say is that education, like vaccination, should be voluntary. If a boy or girl, if a particular boy or girl has the attitude, I can't learn from you, I will just go out into life and learn as I go along, that should be applauded. And that applies to a lot of people anyway. What we learn in life, there's a meme in my talk that shows that we learn that much from theory, so that's the textbook. We learn that much from actually, what's the pilot's living life experience. Yeah, so it's 3 or 4 times as much, and we learn that much from making mistakes.
Yeah.
Now, with classroom being a risk-averse environment, they don't allow you to make mistakes. As well as not allowing you to say no or ask why, they don't allow you to make mistakes. And being a sterile environment in which nothing ever changes and nothing ever happens, how can boys or girls learn? So what happens, and I should know because it happened to me, they leave school with an aversion to learning.
Yes. Yes, I mean, I totally agree with you there. And as somebody who at my school years, I left at 15. As soon as I could get out of school, that was it. There was no way I was going into any secondary education. And it's only then that I started to learn. And I found learning not a chore. You know, I got into my first job, which was in printing, and you're being told this is a print machine. You're going, wow, look at that, and it prints. Oh, I never knew that. How does that? And you're just inquisitive, and you know, you're sort of going, wow, and can you? And you're asking a million questions, and they're going, blimey, this bloke's enthusiastic, and you know, I kept the job, which was great. But not only is the school this rigid, narcissistic system, but unfortunately, the whole environment outside of your house, with the way that the government is running its rules, is bad, and what they're proposing with all these other things is even worse. And so we're all at a bit of a loss. You know, that it's not just the school anymore in which you're being ordered about, but we're getting it from everywhere with. When you simply get into a car, there's all these rules that you've got to abide by, these infringements where nobody's been hurt or harmed, that suddenly you're paying for because you've inadvertently driven into a hashed area on the ground. Or, you know, there's so many, you've parked your car slightly off on the yellow line or something, and it's just slightly off there. Oh, no, there's a ticket, sorry, that's another infringement. We're in a society that's penalising us almost for breathing, and not complying with the rules and regulations.